Hello and welcome to a special episode of Scene.
On today's show we're going to be focusing on a series of documentaries made by the students here in Stratford-upon-Avon College.
I'm your host Liam Clark. Alongside me is Jade Giorgio, and on today's show we're taking you on a little tour of some of the finest work produced here at the college.
So to kick us off, here's a documentary about a brewer in Warwickshire called Purity.
This is produced by Gareth Harborne and presented by Elliot Causer, and it's called Oh Beer, Oh Beer.
Beer is a British icon that we all forget about. We're all guilty of it. It's one of the last industries in the UK that we can still be proud of. It brings a sense of community. It's some people's business and a lot of people's pleasure. Real British beer is grown, brewed and consumed here in the UK. But unless you look into independent beer, you can never truly know what it's about. During this documentary, I plan to introduce you to the world of beer and independent breweries. We're going to look at how it's made, who makes it, and how beer adds 2.8 billion to the UK's economy every year. But in light of this, why are there 26 pubs closing every week? Cheers. So now you need to know how beer is made. I've brought you to Purity Breweries in Warwickshire, an independent brewery that's doing pretty well for itself. I'm here with Paul Nichols, who's one of the assistant brewers here at Purity. He's going to show us around, show us some of the kit and show us how to make beer.
This is the malt that goes into our beers. So it all starts off, most of the malt all starts off as the same thing. It's all barley grains. It's just heated to different degrees to get different colours and different flavours out. So this is our most basic one, if you want to give that a try. This is like what goes into most of our beer.
So what have we got here? What are these tanks?
We've recently moved to like this much bigger bit of kit from Raucon. So we did used to have like quite a traditional brewery. Probably the ones you've seen before. We have a mash tun. Yeah, and you allow it from that, get your sweet work from that, and then go over to the kettle.
Yeah.
With this kit, it's actually a more sort of European, German way of doing things. It's a mash lauter. So we actually mash into this vessel. So we come in through there from our mill into here, we give it the rest, and then we actually transfer everything, all the grain and all the liquid over to this vessel. It's sort of all the proteins that we get during the boil. A lot of them actually come from the hops which we add during the boil. And we've gone over from just using whole cone to using some pellets.
So we've just been into the brewery, see what's going on in there. We've moved on to the lab, quite a bit of kit in here, apparently some of it's new. So can you tell us what some of this stuff does?
The pH is a big one we do. We test the pH of our mash, at the end of our work, the pH of our yeast, and the pH at the end of fermentation.
We're actually standing under these quite colossal fermentation tanks. What's actually happening to the liquid inside these?
Well, we call it wort when it comes straight from the brewery before we've added any yeast or anything. It comes in nice and cool, about 20 degrees C. The actual process is sugar to alcohol and carbon dioxide, so that's where you get your carbonation from. From this stage, once our fermentations are done, we cool it right down. We add some finings which pulls out a lot of the protein. So that beer that you saw before, that hadn't been fined yet, that was actually quite cloudy. Yeah. Obviously we want a nice clear product in the bar. So again, it all goes back to like looking at it and thinking, is there something wrong with this? Yeah. A cloudy pint's the worst thing. and then we get it over to our racking room.
So now you've seen how beer's made, we're going to learn about what happens with the people behind the scenes.
An independent brewery means we're not part of one of the larger conglomerations. So we're not one of the major brewers that also own pubs as well as a whole portfolio of brands. We're a small independent brewery, as I say, focused on a few core brands.
A microbrewery, well, I was hoping it would be semi-retirement, but it is a full-time job.
I think the key thing is decision-making process is very, very quick. Any decision required doesn't have to go through a process of committees and focus groups and whatever. It's a small, tight-knit group of people who can make all the decisions about the business.
Our pub here is a community pub, and we do a lot to support charities, and local groups come in here and use our rear room facilities for sort of functions. It is a proper community pub, as there used to be lots of. There's very few now.
We don't have a mission statement per se. What we do is we have a set of values that underpin everything we do. Primarily we're about working closely with the environment, about being, if you like, sympathetic towards the environment in everything we do. The brewing process, for instance, creates a lot of wastewater. We recycle all our wastewater through a system of wetlands.
Binge drinking is youngsters in town preloading before they go out, and they drink strong shots and things. Beer is a low alcohol product, and it's served in pubs, which is a controlled atmosphere.
The point about real ale and craft ale in particular is in fact that we are very niche. We're very targeted to older drinkers. To be blunt, we're quite expensive. If you want to get cheap alcohol, you don't buy our sort of brands. The smoking ban was the initial thing that hit the UK on trade. That was followed almost immediately by the recession. So that double whammy had quite an impact on the on trade, in particular within the UK.
We've not noticed a big drop in sales, although September was pretty bad everywhere.
It's had an impact on the whole brewing industry. What it's done to the brewing industry is polarised it. So in other words, you've got a bit of growth at the value end of the market, typified perhaps by Wetherspoons and what they do, and they're doing very well at the moment. But you've also got growth at the top end, so at the premium and niche end.
There are now too many of these breweries.
Even Warwick, there are 2 set up in the last 12 months.
There are well over 1,000 breweries in the country now.
They are fighting for customers.
It all started really in 2002 when the Gordon Brown-led government, Labour government, introduced Brewers Relief, it was called, and it's a progressive duty which gives people a good start up in the industry, and which is good news for choice, but not good news for the bigger brewers. But then the outlets are dwindling. Pubs are closing down, as we know, and also perhaps the pubs that are there are being bought up by some of the bigger breweries and pubcos, and basically there are too few outlets. I think this is where micro pubs perhaps come into the equation. They're basically one-room parlours, which pubs used to be back in the old days before we had Sky Television, hot food in pubs, music, children under 18. We're going back to basics here. The beer is served basically out of the barrels. There's no need for beer line contamination because you're just basically turning a tap and dispensing the beer straight into that.
It is basically Warwick, Leamington, occasionally Coventry, and occasionally places like Stratford. People
who've discovered Purity because they live locally are very loyal to our brand, and we appreciate that because they're the core of our business.
The thing about a real ale, it's so variable, and that's the beauty of real ale. There are so many different varieties, so many different types. Some you won't like, but many you will, and that's what it's about, really.
As you can see, independent breweries depend on the local area. By drinking at your local or a micro pub, you're actively supporting independent breweries and therefore supporting the growth of a local industry. We need to take Britain out of the spotlight of binge drinking and introduce a new positive image of local, social, responsible drinking. Cheers.
Wow, there we go. Now we know how beer's made.
I know, not a beer girl myself, but after that, I will try.
Absolutely. Now we're going to a quick ad break. During the break, I'm going to go get myself a little beer, I reckon.
Oh, beer, oh beer.
See you in a minute.
These are all my pets. All my pets. I've got dogs, I've got parrots, and I've got 7 foxes that we class as pets.
Every year, approximately 5 to 7 million companion animals enter animal shelters nationwide. As winter is approaching, many of these animals will have to brave the harsh weathers alone. Animal shelters around the UK try their best to prevent this from happening. One of the animal shelters tackling this issue is Nuneaton and Warwickshire Wildlife Sanctuary, and we had the privilege of spending the day there.
My name is Jeff Grewcock and I run the Nuneaton and Warwickshire Wildlife Sanctuary. And the main aim of the sanctuary is to receive all injured animals, get them better, and then return them back to the wild. Yeah, we've got Roxy the fox. She's 14 next May, and she's the oldest fox in UK captivity. She actually does a lot of programmes. She's done the Speckled Hen advert on Dave. She's done Foxes Live with Chris Packham. She's done Autumn Watch with Chris Packham, and then she's done Foxes Live with Mark Evans. So she does quite a few things. She's been in other programmes, but in certain programmes we don't know what she's been in, because she was filmed and then she was put into a library, so they just use her whenever they want to use her. It's really hard to bond with not to bond with the animals, solely because in certain cases you hand rear them, and then knowing you've got to release them, or you've got to get animals that come in that have been badly injured, domestic animals, and then you've got to rehome them. So it's the bonding is very difficult. It is, but you have to do it. You have to do it. This one was chucked out of a car window at about 3 weeks old, so it was very, very small. It was only about that small, and he was nearly dead when he came in. So what we do now, oh, you bite, little devil. So what we do now, we when we need fluids, we just inject them. We just squirt fluids into them, and he pulled through. Very, very lucky ferret. Right, yeah. We get residents in every day, every new ones. You never know what's coming in. I mean, later on this afternoon we've got to go and pick up 5 domestic chickens, 4 ducks and a turkey. Somewhere's closed down, so we've got to bring all the animals out before the kids go in and kill them, which they will do. It's community centres that close down. They have the pets for the kids, and if they lose all their support, then they have to close the animal side down, and then we have to go in and bring all the animals out, and we have to do it pretty quick, because if the animals are left there knowing that the place is going to close down, then you will get the youths going, and then they will kill all the animals. So it happens quite often. We've got 2 dogs, one's called Buster and one's called Toby, both tied up on railway lines. It was only the oncoming train that saw them being tied up, so they stopped the trains, and then we had to go and do a rescue. We don't rescue cats and dogs as a rule, but these are one-off rescues. So if we hadn't rescued them, the train would have killed them. So, but beautiful dogs. So they stop here now.
The sanctuary is not government funded. Jeff and the team have to raise over £28,000 a year just to ensure that the animals are kept well fed and safe. The sanctuary is always looking for donations of pillows and blankets just to ensure that the animals can stay warm during winter. If you would like to make any kind of donation, go to www.nuneatonwildlife.co.uk.
The job is very rewarding. It's fantastic. To actually receive an injured animal, get it better, then re-release it, there's nothing more satisfying. And it's just marvellous. It's best thing in life.
Oh, there really are some good people on this earth.
Absolutely. Now, this next one is by Stefan Luca, and it's called Working with Blue.
My name's Lawrence Dingley. I'm an artist. I paint in oil paint, and my studio is in South Warwickshire in a village called Ettington. Always been interested in arts and painting in particular. You know, even as a young boy, sort of 10, 11, 12-year-old, I was outside painting in the countryside. So it's just a natural progression really to go off to art college and continue beyond into adult life. I sold my first painting, I should think I was probably about 16, and I was sort of painting local Warwickshire landscapes in oil paint. I remember the lady I sold it to because I recently, sort of 35 years on, sold her another one, and I think I cringed a bit when I saw this first painting because it was probably okay at the time, but I used to use a lot of black paint to create shadows, which is not really correct. Too much black makes a painting look a bit sooty, and there was a lot of black in this painting. That's what I remember about my first painting, but I think I was probably very happy with the money that I received at that tender age. I guess one of the big frustrations is if you've got yourself in a nice situation and then the weather changes, hopefully you've got enough down on the canvas, you've got your camera, you've got a record of it, and you can maybe come back to it in the studio. I do paint with natural light. I don't paint on cloudy days, basically. I need a good contrast in light and dark to succeed with the paintings. So I'm constantly looking at weather forecasts and trying to take those windows of opportunity. Why do I paint? Well, I suppose initially it was because I felt I was good at it. It was probably the best thing I could do. Not particularly academic, and I just thought, you know, I'm not bad at this. I enjoy doing it, so it made sense to make a career out of it. I think sometimes now you can get into slight ruts because you're doing it also. I'm painting to make a living. So one slight problem there can be I paint also in a bit of a commercial way sometimes because you're painting subject matter that you know might sell. This is one of the big dangers really, because you're trying to feed a family. If I know I can sell particular images, that's a route I might go down, and I have to be very wary of this and still try new things, which is great because it keeps me fresh if I'm trying new subject matter in particular. You know, it may not always work so well, it may not always sell so well, but it keeps me interested in the basic principle of painting. With the colours that I use, one of the main problem colours for me actually is green, particularly living in Warwickshire, where for most of the year we're surrounded by a very green landscape. There are an awful lot of subtleties in green. It's not my favourite colour. I think probably that's why I've ended up painting seascapes, where I'm using a lot of blues. So I suppose I am drawn to the blues, for some reason it seems to suit me. I think I want my paintings to actually say to somebody, I'd like to be there. You know, I've painted this scene because I wanted to be there, and hopefully the view I've got of this particular scene is an interesting angle on it. And so if I'm inspired to paint it, then hopefully the viewer's inspired to look at it. I'm painting truthfully what I see. When something is flat, when the light is just not there, the painting will be flat. So really, I'm just recording with my eyes what I see, and hopefully with the ability to mix up these colour tones. And if I can do that in an effective way, and I've got a composition that is hopefully inspiring to me, it'll be a painting that will hopefully be enjoyed by the onlooker.
Wow, what a wonderful location to paint.
I know. That's all we've got time for today, I'm afraid. But do tune in next week, same time, same place, here on Big Centre TV. Goodbye.
Bye.